The small cell at the end of Corridor Z17 was different from all others in the prison station known as the Void. Inside lived the last known captured human in the galaxy. William Carter sat on his thin mattress, counting the days of his imprisonment, by scratching small marks on the wall with a metal shard he had worked loose from his bed frame years ago. Today marked 18,263 days, just over 50 years since he had been locked away. William ran his hand through his gray hair. He had been 32 when the Galactic Confederation defeated Earth in the short but devastating war. Now his once strong body showed the wear of decades in captivity, though he still performed his exercise routine daily, refusing to surrender. Completely to time and confinement, the cell was 10 steps long and 8 steps wide. William knew this measurement perfectly, having paced it countless times. The walls were made of a strange alien metal that absorbed sound and felt slightly warm to the touch. The only furnishings were his bed, a small washing station, and a food slot where bland nutrition packets appeared twice daily. William's only visitor was the prison warden, Zax Tur, a 6-limbed Praxian with metallic blue scales covering his elongated body. Praxians were known for their strict adherence to rules and their natural armor that made them perfect prison guards. Zax Tur came exactly once per month to inspect the cell and ensure the last human was still securely contained. The aliens feared humans. The official reason for the war had been that humans were expanding too quickly, developing technologies that threatened galactic stability. But William, who had been a special forces captain, knew the truth was more complex. Humans had been preparing defenses against a different threat, one the Confederation had dismissed as myth until it was too late. William was in the middle of his afternoon exercises when the lights in his cell flickered. This had never happened before. The Void was supposed to be the most secure and well-maintained prison in Confederation space. He stopped his push-ups and listened carefully. In the distance, he heard something that had been absent for 50 years: alarms. The food slot in his door slid open unexpectedly. This was not feeding time. William approached cautiously and saw a small screen had been pushed through. On it, news footage played showing scenes of chaos across various planets. Strange biological ships with pulsing veins and organic technology were attacking major Confederation worlds. The footage showed civilians being consumed by a gelatinous mass that seemed to absorb them into the growing ships. William felt his heart race. He knew what these things were. Earth had encountered them before. They were the reason humanity had been building up its military forces, not to attack the Confederation as had been claimed, but to defend against these parasites from the galaxy's outer rim. The Shrike had arrived. The slot closed suddenly. William returned to his bed, mind racing with the implications. If the Shrike were attacking in force, the Confederation was in serious trouble. They had never developed effective countermeasures, having dismissed early human reports of these creatures as fabrications designed to justify military expansion. 3 hours later, the entire station shuddered violently. The lights went out, completely, replaced seconds later by dim red emergency lighting. William heard distant explosions and, more worryingly, strange squelching sounds that reminded him of his one previous encounter with Shrike forces on a remote outpost before the war. The lock on his cell door clicked open. William stared in disbelief. In 50 years, that door had never opened except when he was sedated for his yearly medical examination. He approached cautiously, expecting a trap. When he pushed gently, the heavy door swung inward. The corridor outside was empty except for the flashing emergency lights. No guards were visible. Another explosion rocked the station, stronger this time, and William had to brace himself against the wall to keep from falling. Human. The voice came from behind him. William spun around, instinctively dropping into a fighting stance despite his age. Warden Zax Tur stood there, his metallic scales reflecting the red emergency lights. The Praxian looked different. His usually immaculate uniform was torn, and one of his 6 limbs hung limply at his side. "I should leave you here to die with the rest of us," Zax Tur said, his voice translator giving his words a mechanical quality. "But the Confederation needs you." William laughed bitterly. 50 years in this hole and now you need me? The Shrike have returned. They have attacked 17 worlds simultaneously. Our weapons are ineffective. The warden's compound eyes fixed on William. Your file. I reviewed it when the attacks began. Before your capture, you were part of a special Earth force that successfully contained a Shrike colony. You know how to fight them. William's mind raced. The Shrike had been his specialty. Earth had developed specific technologies to combat their unique biology after their scout ships had been detected decades before the war with the Confederation. All that knowledge had been lost when Earth fell, or nearly all. Some of it still existed in William's mind. If I help you, what do I get? William asked. Survival. Possibly, Zaxtor replied. The station is being consumed. The Shrike bioships have attached to the outer hull and are absorbing it section by section. We have perhaps 20 minutes before they reach this corridor. As if to emphasize his point, the station shook again. The lights flickered, and in the distance, William heard screams cut suddenly short. Not good enough, William said. I want freedom, complete amnesty, and not just for me, for any human prisoners still alive in Confederation space. Zaxtor's face was hard to read with its alien features, but William thought he detected hesitation, followed by resignation. If there is still a Confederation after this, I will ensure your demands are met. We have no choice. The warden held out a small device. This security pass will get us to the emergency shuttle bay. Most guards have already fled or been taken. We must move quickly. William took the pass, feeling strange to be holding something that had not been approved and sterilized for his cell. Freedom after 50 years felt unreal, especially in these circumstances. Lead the way, William said. They moved through the corridors of the void, passing signs of battle and worse. Half-absorbed bodies fused with the walls, their features frozen in terror as the Shrike conversion process had overtaken them. William recognized the patterns of attack from his previous encounter. The Shrike were following the same strategy but on a much larger scale. In a weapons locker near the shuttle bay, Zaxtor retrieved a plasma rifle for himself and, after a moment's hesitation, handed a smaller sidearm to William. I'm trusting you, human, the warden said. William checked the weapon with practiced ease despite the decades since he had last held one. Not sure that's wise, but we have bigger problems right now. They reached the shuttle bay to find most of the escape craft already gone. Only one small maintenance vessel remained, designed for repairs to the station's exterior, rather than long-distance travel. It would have to do. As they prepared to board, a section of the wall behind them bulged inward. The metal rippled like liquid, and a sickly green substance began seeping through. William recognized it immediately. Move, he shouted, pushing Zaxtor toward the shuttle. They're breaking through. The wall burst open, and 3 Shrike drones poured through. Vaguely humanoid figures with translucent skin, through which pulsing organs were visible. They moved with unnatural speed, leaving trails of corrosive slime behind them. William fired without hesitation, aiming for the central nerve cluster he knew existed in their chest cavities. The first drone exploded in a shower of acidic fluid. The second lunged at Zaxtor, who fought it off with his remaining good arms while William took aim at the third. The shuttle door closed behind them seconds after they tumbled inside. Through the viewport, they watched as the bay was overrun with Shrike drones, their bodies merging together into a larger mass that began absorbing the metal of the station itself. As their small craft broke free from the doomed prison, William looked back at his home of 50 years. The once imposing structure of the void was now half consumed by a pulsing organic mass that grew larger by the second, adding the station's material and unfortunate inhabitants to its own biomass. The galaxy needs you, human, Zaxtor said, quietly as they accelerated away. William said nothing, watching as the stars welcomed him back after half a century. Freedom had come, but at what cost? And could one aged human prisoner really be the galaxy's only hope? The maintenance vessel shuddered as it entered hyperspace. It was not built for this kind of travel, but they had no other option. William sat in the co-pilot seat, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace through the small viewport. Freedom felt strange after 50 years in a cell. The open space of even this tiny ship made him feel exposed and vulnerable. Zaxtour piloted with his 4 working arms, his injured limb now properly bandaged. The Praxian had not spoken much since their escape from the void. William studied his former jailer with cautious eyes. For 50 years, this alien had been the face of his imprisonment, the monthly reminder of humanity's defeat. Now they were unlikely allies. "Where are we heading?" William finally asked, breaking the tense silence. "Nexus Prime," Zaxtour replied, without looking away from the controls. "The Confederation capital. If any coordinated response to the Shrike exists, it will be organized from there." William nodded. He had never seen the Confederation capital. The war had ended before Earth forces could reach it. He had only heard descriptions from other prisoners in the early days, before he was isolated. "How long has the Confederation known about the Shrike?" William asked. Zaxtour's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of discomfort that William had learned to recognize over the decades. The first confirmed attack was 3 standard weeks ago on an outer mining colony. Most believed it was an isolated incident. Then attacks began on multiple fronts simultaneously. William laughed bitterly. "Earth warned your people about the Shrike 20 years before your Confederation attacked us. We sent proof, samples, video records of our encounters with their scout ships. Your diplomats dismissed it all as human propaganda to justify our military buildup." The ship lurched suddenly, forcing both of them to grab the console for support. Zaxtour quickly adjusted several controls. "This vessel was not designed for extended hyperspace travel," the Praxian explained. "We will need to make stops to prevent engine failure." William nodded, then returned to his point. "Your people feared humans would become too powerful. You never considered we were building defenses against a real threat." Zaxtour was silent for a long moment. "I was a junior security officer during the war," he finally said. "I followed orders. The official position was that humans were aggressive, expansionist, and dangerous to galactic stability." "And now?" William asked. "Now the Shrike are consuming our worlds, and a human prisoner might be our only hope. The irony is not lost on me." The ship's communication system crackled to life with an automated distress signal. Zaxtour adjusted the receiver to clarify the message. "A civilian transport vessel is under attack nearby," he said. "They report Shrike boarders." William leaned forward. "How many passengers?" "The registry indicates capacity for 200, mostly Aldarian civilians, with some Kronos merchants." William weighed their options. The maintenance vessel had no real weapons. They would be risking their lives and their mission to attempt a rescue. But he also knew the value of observing Shrike attack patterns firsthand. "We should help," he said. "I need to see how the Shrike are operating now if their tactics have evolved. And we might find allies." Zaxtour looked surprised. "I did not expect you to suggest risking yourself for Confederation citizens." William's expression hardened. "I'm not a monster, despite what your propaganda might have said about humans. And this is practical. I need current information on Shrike behavior." After a moment's hesitation, Zaxtour altered their course. The maintenance vessel dropped out of hyperspace near a large passenger liner that was clearly in distress. Parts of its hull were already being covered by the distinctive green organic matter of a Shrike infection. "We can dock at the emergency airlock," Zaxtour said, piloting their small craft toward the larger ship. "But we have minimal weapons and no protective gear." William examined the plasma pistol he had been given. "This will have to do. Aim for their central nerve clusters. They don't have conventional organs like we do." The docking procedure was rough but successful. As the airlock cycled, William prepared himself mentally for combat. It had been decades since he had fought, but his body remembered the training even if it was now older and slower. The scene that greeted them aboard the passenger liner was chaos. Emergency lighting bathed the corridors in red. Abandoned luggage littered the floors. In the distance, they could hear screams and strange squelching sounds that William recognized as Shrike movement. "The bridge," William said decisively. If anyone is organizing a defense, they'll be there. They moved carefully through the corridors, encountering no one at first. Then they turned a corner and found themselves face to face with 3 passengers, a tall Aldarian female and 2 smaller Kronos males, all clutching improvised weapons. Praxian security. Zaxtur identified himself quickly before the frightened passengers could attack. We received your distress call. The Aldarian lowered her weapon slightly. The Shrike are in the main cabin. They've taken at least 50 passengers already. Her eyes shifted to William, widening in shock. Is that a human? Yes, William said before Zaxtur could answer. And I've fought Shrike before. Where's your captain? The Aldarian seemed too stunned by the presence of a human to respond. Immediately, one of the Kronos spoke up instead. Dead. The bridge is sealed. First Officer Lin is organizing the defense in the dining hall with the security team. William nodded. Take us there. As they moved through the ship, William noticed the Shrike infestation was spreading along the walls and floor. The organic matter pulsed with an unsettling rhythm. He stopped to examine it briefly. It's different, he said quietly to Zaxtur. The composition has evolved. It's spreading faster than I remember. They reached the dining hall to find about 40 passengers and crew barricaded inside. First Officer Lin, a stocky Vexian with 4 eyes and tough gray skin, was directing the placement of makeshift barriers at the doors. His reaction to William was similar to the Aldarians, shock followed by suspicion. A human? Where did you find it, Praxian? William ignored the dehumanizing language. I've fought Shrike before. Your barriers won't hold them. They'll simply absorb the material and grow stronger. Lin bristled visibly. We have no reason to trust a human's advice. A loud crash from outside the hall interrupted the argument. The Shrike were getting closer. Trust me or don't, William said firmly. But those things will be through your barriers in minutes. You need to change tactics. Something in William's tone must have convinced the first officer. What do you suggest? The Shrike are weakest when they're actively consuming new material. That's when their outer membrane is thinnest. You need to hit them then. Aim for the central nerve clusters. William pointed to the plasma weapons some security officers carried. Those will work, but you need to adjust the frequency. He quickly showed them how to modify their weapons, knowledge that had been standard for Earth's defense forces. The security team followed his instructions with skeptical but desperate attention. Just as they finished, the barriers at the main entrance began to dissolve as green ooze seeped through. William positioned the armed defenders strategically. Wait until they're fully through, he instructed. Then fire on my mark. The barrier collapsed in a rush of acidic fluid. 3 large Shrike forms pushed through, their translucent bodies pulsing with stolen life energy. William waited until they began absorbing the nearest materials, their outer membranes stretching thin. Now! The modified plasma weapons fired simultaneously. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Shrike convulsed as their nerve clusters were disrupted, then collapsed into puddles of inert organic matter. The defenders looked at William with new respect. First Officer Lin approached him, all 4 eyes blinking in surprise. How did you know that would work? Earth fought them before, William said simply. Before your Confederation decided we were the real threat. A young communication officer rushed into the room. First Officer, we've restored partial communications. Nexus Prime is calling all ships to assist in defense. The Shrike have launched a major attack on the capital. William and Zaxtur exchanged worried looks. If the Shrike had already reached the Confederation capital, the situation was worse than they had thought. We need to get to Nexus Prime now, William said. And we need a better ship than that maintenance vessel. Lin hesitated only briefly before nodding. Take our secondary shuttle. It's faster and armed. He looked at William with a mixture of confusion and reluctant gratitude. Whatever happened between humans and the Confederation, perhaps there are things we didn't understand. As they prepared to leave for Nexus Prime, William knew that the real fight was just beginning. The galaxy that had imprisoned him now needed him desperately. The irony was indeed not lost on him. The shuttle from the passenger liner carried William and Zaxtur through the chaos surrounding Nexus Prime. The Confederation capital planet was under heavy attack. Dozens of the organic Shrike ships hung in orbit, their pulsing green forms, a stark contrast to the sleek metal of the defending Confederation fleet. The planetary shield is still holding, Zaxtor noted as they approached, but it won't last much longer under this assault. William studied the battle with experienced eyes. The Confederation ships fired energy weapons that seemed to do little damage to the Shrike vessels. Each hit was quickly absorbed and healed. "They're using the wrong approach," William said. "Energy weapons just feed the Shrike. They absorb the power and grow stronger." Their shuttle received clearance to pass through a small opening in the planetary shield. As they descended toward the capital city, William saw signs of panic below. The streets were filled with beings from dozens of species, all rushing to evacuation centers. They landed at the central government complex, a massive structure of gleaming white towers connected by elevated walkways. Security forces immediately surrounded their shuttle, weapons raised. "Stand down," Zaxtor called out as they exited. "I am Warden Zaxtor of the Void. I bring critical information about the enemy." The security forces lowered their weapons, slightly but tensed again when William emerged. Many of them had never seen a human before, knowing them only from historical records. A human? The security commander, a burly Kronos with ridged skin, stepped forward. "Why have you brought a human to the capital during a crisis?" "Because I've fought the Shrike before," William said firmly, "and won." The commander looked skeptical, but waved them through. "The Council has declared emergency powers. All relevant information is being gathered in the central chamber." The interior of the government complex was as chaotic as the streets outside. Officials from various species rushed through the corridors, carrying data tablets and shouting orders. Screens on the wall showed the battle in orbit and reports from other worlds under attack. When they reached the central chamber, William found himself in a vast circular room with tiered seating. At the center was a large holographic display showing a map of Confederation space. Nearly a third of it was colored red, indicating Shrike control or ongoing attacks. The Galactic Council members sat in the front row, representatives from the 12 dominant species of the Confederation. They were arguing loudly among themselves, some demanding immediate evacuation of the capital, others insisting on standing their ground. High Counselor Ilara Voss, a tall Eldarian with luminescent skin that glowed with stress, was trying to maintain order. When she saw Zaxtor enter with William, she paused mid-sentence. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to the human. "High Counselor," Zaxtor said formally, "I present William Carter, former Earth Defense Captain with specialized knowledge of the Shrike. He has agreed to assist the Confederation in exchange for the release of all remaining human prisoners." Murmurs spread through the chamber. One council member, a Vexian with 4 narrowed eyes, stood up angrily. "This is outrageous, bringing an enemy combatant into the council during our darkest hour. The human race was confined for good reason." William stepped forward, facing the council without fear. 50 years of imprisonment had not broken his spirit. "You confined us because you feared our weapons," he said, his voice echoing in the large room. "You never understood those weapons were designed to fight the very enemy now at your doorstep." High Counselor Ilara raised her hand for silence. "Is this true? Earth knew of the Shrike before the war? We encountered their scout ships 20 years before the Confederation attacked Earth," William explained. "We tried to warn your diplomats. They didn't believe us or didn't want to. They saw our military buildup as a threat to the Confederation, not as a defense against a common enemy." The holographic display flickered as new reports came in. 3 more Confederation worlds had fallen to the Shrike in just the last hour. "What do you know about fighting these creatures?" Ilara asked William, her tone now urgent rather than hostile. "The Shrike are a hive mind," William explained, stepping to the holographic display. "They share information instantly across their collective. They consume organic and inorganic matter, incorporating it into their mass. But they have weaknesses." He manipulated the display to show a close-up of a Shrike drone based on the ship's security footage from the passenger liner. Their central nerve clusters are vulnerable during active feeding. Their outer membrane thins as they absorb new material. That's when they can be destroyed. Energy weapons are useless. They just absorb the energy. Physical disruption and specific frequency vibrations are effective. Another council member, a serpentine draconid, spoke up. If what you say is true, why should we trust you now? Humans might see this as an opportunity for revenge. William looked the draconid in the eye. Because extinction doesn't care about old grudges. The Shrike will consume everything. Human, Praxian, Aldarian, draconid. All of us. Earth understood that. It's why we were preparing to defend not just ourselves, but all sentient life. The chamber was silent as his words sank in. The holographic display updated again, showing Shrike ships breaking through a section of the planetary shield. We don't have time for debate, William said urgently. I need access to your weapon systems, manufacturing facilities, and any human scientists you still have in custody. Earth developed specific countermeasures. I can help you recreate them, but we need to act now. High Counselor Alara stood. The council will need to vote on. She was interrupted by a massive explosion that shook the entire complex. The lights flickered, and alarm sirens blared. Shield breach in Sector 7, someone shouted. Shrike forces have landed in the northern district. Ilara looked at the emergency reports flooding in, then back at William. Her expression hardened into resolve. There's no time for a vote. As High Counselor, I invoke Emergency Protocol Theta. She turned to her security chief. Grant William Carter full access to our defense systems and release any human prisoners with scientific or military expertise. The Vexian counselor protested loudly, but Ilara cut him off. The Confederation faces extinction. Old fears and grudges mean nothing now. She looked directly at William. If you betray this trust, what remains of your species will pay the price. William nodded. I understand. Now, I need to see your weapons capabilities immediately. As they rushed from the chamber, Zaxtor spoke quietly to William. Most of the remaining human prisoners are held at the Central Science Facility. They've been used for research rather than kept in standard cells. William's jaw tightened at this news, but he kept his focus on the immediate threat. How many? Perhaps 200 on Nexus Prime, maybe a few thousand throughout Confederation space. Such small numbers after a population of billions on Earth. William pushed down his anger. There would be time for reckoning later, if they survived. They were led to the Defense Command Center, a secure facility deep beneath the government complex. There, military officers from various species coordinated the battle against the Shrike. They looked up in surprise as William entered. This is William Carter, Zaxtor announced. He has High Council clearance to access all defense systems. He knows how to fight the Shrike. A senior commander, a female Praxian with silver-gray scales, approached them. I am Commander Liana. The Northern District has been overrun. We have less than 6 hours before the Shrike reached this complex. William moved to the central display. Show me what weapons you have available. As Commander Liana brought up the inventory, William quickly assessed their options. The Confederation had impressive technology, but it was all designed for conventional warfare. We need to modify these, he said, pointing to sonic disruptors in the inventory. And I need to speak with the human scientists immediately. The first human William had seen in 50 years besides himself was brought to the command center an hour later. Dr. Samantha Lloyd had been a biologist specializing in xenobiology. She had aged like William, her once brown hair now white, her face lined with years of hardship. When she saw William, her eyes widened in shock, then filled with tears. Captain Carter? You're alive? William nodded, emotion threatening to overwhelm him as well. We both are, Sam, and right now the galaxy needs us more than it knows. 6 hours had passed since William's arrival at Nexus Prime. He now stood in a large laboratory with Dr. Samantha Lloyd and 5 other human scientists who had been released from various research facilities. They worked frantically to modify Confederation weapons to combat the Shrike effectively. The frequency modulator is almost ready, Samantha said, her hands steady despite the urgency of their task. but we need to test it before full deployment. William nodded, studying the defensive plans on a large screen. The Shrike had taken control of almost half the capital city. Their advance had slowed only because they were busy absorbing and converting captured areas rather than pushing forward immediately. "We don't have time for extensive testing," William replied. "The Shrike will begin their next push within hours." Commander Liana entered the laboratory, her silver-gray scales dulled with fatigue. "The evacuation of civilian sectors is 60% complete, but we've lost contact with the Eastern District entirely." The door slid open again, and Zach's tour walked in with High Counselor Ilara. The Aldarian leader looked grim. "The Council has received reports from other systems," Ilara said. 23 worlds have fallen completely. 12 more are under active attack. The Confederation fleet is scattered and taking heavy losses." William turned to the assembled group. "Then we need to make our stand here. If we can demonstrate an effective defense, we can share the technology with other worlds." He pointed to a map of the city. "We'll deploy in the Central District. The Shrike will target the government complex next. It's the most valuable strategic location with the most resources to absorb." Samantha handed William a modified weapon. "This disruptor should work based on the old Earth specifications. We've adjusted it for the evolved Shrike biology you observed." William took the weapon, feeling its weight. It reminded him of similar devices Earth forces had used 50 years ago. "We need to mass-produce these immediately." "The manufacturing center is already working on it," Commander Liana said. "But we'll only have enough for a small defense force initially." William nodded. "Then we need to make each one count. I'll lead the first team personally." Zach's tour stepped forward. "I will join you." William looked at his former jailer with surprise. The Praxian had been by his side since their escape from the Void, but he hadn't expected him to volunteer for such a dangerous mission. "You're not a soldier," William said. "No," Zach's tour agreed. "But I know what is at stake, and perhaps I have a debt to pay." William understood the unspoken meaning. After 50 years of keeping him imprisoned, Zach's tour felt responsible in some way. He nodded in acceptance. 2 hours later, William stood with a mixed team of 30 fighters from various Confederation species. Each carried a modified disruptor weapon. They had established a defensive line 3 blocks from the government complex at a wide avenue that the Shrike would need to cross. "Remember your training," William told the team. "Wait until they're actively feeding. Aim for the central mass. Don't waste power on the outer tendrils." The ground beneath them trembled. In the distance, buildings began to dissolve as the distinctive green glow of Shrike activity moved toward them. The aliens were coming. "Hold position," William ordered. "Let them come to us." The first wave of Shrike appeared at the far end of the avenue. They were no longer recognizable as individual entities. Instead, a massive wall of pulsing organic matter flowed forward, absorbing everything in its path. Smaller drone forms broke off occasionally to investigate side streets or buildings, but the main mass continued inexorably toward the government complex. "Steady," William said, raising his own weapon. "Wait for my signal." The Shrike mass reached the first barriers they had set up, large metal blockades placed as bait. The organic wall flowed over them and began the absorption process. As it did, the outer membrane thinned visibly. "Now!" William shouted. 30 modified disruptors fired simultaneously. The weapons emitted no visible beam. Instead, they produced a specific frequency that targeted the Shrike's neural network. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The leading edge of the Shrike mass convulsed violently. Parts of it collapsed into inert goo, while other sections recoiled, as if in pain. For the first time, the Shrike advance halted. "It's working," someone shouted. "Keep firing," William ordered. "Maintain the frequency." The defense team pressed forward, driving the Shrike back step by step. For several minutes, it seemed they might actually succeed in pushing the aliens out of the area entirely. Then something changed. At the center of the Shrike mass, a new form began to take shape. It rose up, towering over the buildings around it. Unlike the mindless drones or the flowing organic mass, this entity had a distinct form, vaguely humanoid but 3 times the size of a normal person with multiple limbs and a pulsing central core visible through its translucent skin. "Queen!" William shouted in warning. "Focus fire on the central form." The defense team redirected their weapons, but the Queen was protected by layers of drone material. Their disruptors couldn't penetrate deeply enough to reach her vital core. The Queen raised several limbs, and the Shrike mass surged forward with renewed vigor. Two defenders at the edge of the line were caught and quickly absorbed before the others could pull back. "Retreat to position 2, William ordered. The team fell back to their secondary defensive line, a more fortified position with pre-placed frequency generators. As they activated the generators, the Shrike advance slowed again, but the Queen remained largely unaffected. She seemed to be adapting to the frequency even as they watched. "They're learning," Samantha's voice came through William's communication device. She was monitoring the battle from the laboratory. "The Queen is altering the Shrike's neural pathways to resist the disruption." William knew they needed a new strategy. "Sam, can you modify the frequency? Create a random pattern they can't adapt to?" "Working on it," she replied. "But I need time." "We'll give you time," William said grimly. He turned to Zach's tour. "I need to get closer to the Queen. The portable disruptors might work at shorter range." The Praxian looked at the massive Shrike form, now only 100 meters away. "That would be extremely dangerous." "You have a better idea?" William asked. Zach's tour considered for a moment, then shook his head. "No, but you will not go alone." Together they slipped away from the main defensive line, circling around through side streets to approach the Shrike Queen from a different angle. The buildings here were partially dissolved, making the going treacherous. Green, organic matter coated every surface, and several times they had to freeze in place as drone forms passed nearby. They found a position in a half-collapsed building that gave them a clear view of the Queen. From this distance, William could see details that weren't visible before. The Queen's central core pulsed with a different rhythm than the surrounding mass. And there was something else, a pattern of movement that seemed almost deliberate, as if the Queen were directing the battle with conscious thought. The disruptor won't be enough, William realized. "We need something stronger." He looked at Zach's tour. "Does your team have any high-yield explosives?" The Praxian nodded. "Demolition. Charges in the secondary equipment cache, but they would need to be placed directly on the Queen's core to be effective." William stared at the towering Shrike form. "Then that's what we'll do." "That would be a suicide mission," Zach's tour said quietly. William smiled grimly. "I'm an old man who spent 50 years in prison. If my death can save what's left of humanity and your confederation, it's a fair trade." Before they could move, the Queen suddenly turned in their direction. William felt a strange pressure in his mind, as if something were trying to reach inside his thoughts. The Queen had sensed them somehow. A wave of drone forms surged toward their hiding place. William and Zach's tour fired their disruptors, clearing a path back toward the defensive line, but they were quickly being surrounded. "Run!" William shouted, pushing Zach's tour ahead of him. "Get back to the others." As they ran, William felt something strike his leg. Looking down, he saw a tendril of Shrike material wrapping around his ankle. He cut it with a knife, but not before some of the substance had penetrated his suit and touched his skin. They reached the defensive line just as Samantha contacted them again. "I've modified the frequency pattern, uploading to all disruptors. Now." The defenders' weapons changed tone slightly. The effect on the Shrike was immediate. The mass once again recoiled and parts of it collapsed. Even the Queen seemed affected, her towering form shuddering. But William barely noticed. A strange sensation was spreading from his leg throughout his body. Where the Shrike material had touched him, his skin had taken on a faint greenish tint. "William?" Zach's tour noticed his distress. "What's wrong?" William looked up at his former jailer, now his ally. "I've been infected," he said simply. Around them, the battle continued. The new frequency pattern was working, for now. But William knew the Shrike would adapt again. And now he was running out of time personally as well. The infection was spreading quickly, And with it came something unexpected, a connection to the Shrike hive mind. William could feel the Queen's presence in his thoughts, alien and terrifying. But connection worked both ways. William was rushed to the medical center in the government complex. The infection from the Shrike material spread slowly through his body. Green veins appeared under his skin, branching outward from the initial contact point on his leg. Dr. Samantha Lloyd worked frantically to slow the process. She had studied Shrike biology during her years as a research subject for the Confederation, though never with a live specimen. "The infection is unlike anything I've seen," she told Zach's tour, who stood nearby. "It's not destroying his cells, it's changing them." William lay on the medical bed, his eyes closed but his mind racing. The connection to the Shrike hive mind grew stronger by the minute. He could sense the Queen's thoughts, alien and cold, focused on consumption and expansion. But there was something else too, a deeper intelligence directing the Shrike, something ancient and far away. "I can hear them," William said suddenly, opening his eyes. "The Shrike, I can feel what they feel." Samantha looked alarmed. "William, fight it. Don't let the hive mind take over your consciousness." "No," William said, sitting up despite the pain. "This is an opportunity. I can use this connection." Zach's tour stepped closer. "How?" "The Queen directs the drones, but something else directs the Queen, a central intelligence. If I can reach it through this connection, maybe I can disrupt the entire hive." Before they could respond, Commander Liana burst into the room. "The Shrike have broken through our second defensive line. They'll reach the complex within the hour." William stood up, wobbling slightly. The green veins now covered most of his left side. "Then we don't have much time." Despite protests from Samantha, William insisted on returning to the command center. High Counselor Alara was there, coordinating the final evacuation of government officials. "The last ships leave in 30 minutes, she informed them. "We've loaded the modified disruptor plans and schematics on all vessels. Even if Nexus Prime falls, other worlds will have the technology to fight back." William looked at the tactical display. The Shrike now controlled over 70% of the capital city. The Queen had grown even larger, absorbing more mass and energy. "It won't be enough," William said. "The Shrike adapt quickly. The disruptors will buy time, but not victory." He pointed to his infected arm. "But this might." He explained his plan, to use his growing connection to the hive mind to inject a disruption directly into the Shrike neural network. It would require getting close to the Queen again, very close. "That's suicide," Samantha protested. "Even if you could get near the Queen, the infection will have completely taken over your body by then." "I know," William said simply. "But it's our only chance for a decisive victory." High Counselor Alara studied William with new respect. "After 50 years as our prisoner, you would sacrifice yourself to save the Confederation?" William shook his head. "Not for the Confederation, for life itself. The Shrike will consume everything if they're not stopped. What remains of humanity, your people, all sentient beings in the galaxy." The plan came together quickly. A small team would escort William as close to the Queen as possible. Samantha modified a neural amplifier to strengthen William's connection to the hive mind. The remaining defenders would create a diversion to draw away drone forces. As they prepared to leave, Zach's tour approached William privately. "I request to join your team." William looked at his former jailer curiously. "Why?" The Praxian was silent for a moment. "For 50 years I kept you in a cell, believing it was necessary for the safety of the Confederation. I was wrong. This is my chance to make amends." William nodded slowly. "Then let's go." The streets were barely recognizable as they made their way toward the Queen's position. Buildings had been half absorbed into the growing Shrike mass that now covered much of the city. The infection in William's body had spread further, and he could feel his human consciousness being pulled into the vast alien network of the hive mind. Their diversion worked initially. Most of the drone forms moved to attack the main Confederation force, leaving a path to the Queen relatively clear. William, Zach's tour, and 3 Confederation soldiers moved quickly through the transformed landscape. They found the Queen in what had once been the city's central plaza. She towered over the ruins, her massive form pulsing with stolen energy, tendrils extending in all directions to direct her forces. William could barely walk now. Zaxtor supported him as they took cover behind a partially dissolved statue. "This is close enough," William said, his voice strained. "The neural amplifier should work from here." Samantha's voice came through their communication devices. "The amplifier is ready. But William, once you fully connect to the hive mind, I don't know if you can disconnect. You might be lost entirely." "I understand," William replied. He looked at Zaxtor. "Whatever happens, make sure the Confederation remembers the truth about Earth. We weren't your enemy. We were trying to protect everyone." The Praxian nodded solemnly. "I will ensure the truth is known." William activated the neural amplifier. Immediately, his mind expanded into the vast network of the Shrike Collective. Billions of drone minds surrounded him, all connected to the Queen and through her to something vast and ancient at the center of the hive. Using all his mental strength, William pushed deeper into the network, searching for vulnerabilities. The Queen became aware of his presence. He felt her alarm, then her rage. Tendrils began moving in their direction. "She knows we're here," one of the soldiers warned. "Protect him," Zaxtor ordered. "He needs more time." The soldiers fired their disruptors at approaching drones while Zaxtor stood guard over William's now unresponsive body. The green veins had covered him completely. Inside the hive mind, William faced the Queen directly. Their consciousnesses battled for control. William was just one mind against the collective, but he had something the Shrike lacked: individual will and the desperate strength of a species fighting extinction. He pushed harder, reaching past the Queen to the central intelligence that guided all Shrike across the galaxy. There he made a shocking discovery. The Shrike were themselves fleeing from something, a greater threat from the dark space between galaxies, a predator that consumed even them. With this knowledge came opportunity. William sent a surge of disruption through the network, not to destroy the Shrike, but to confuse them, to break the Queen's control over the drones on Nexus Prime. In the physical world, the effect was immediate. The Queen convulsed violently. Drones stopped attacking and moved aimlessly. Some even turned on each other, tearing apart the very network they had built. Zaxtor watched in amazement as the Shrike forces fell into chaos. "It's working." The Queen made one final effort to regain control. She sent all her remaining energy directly at the source of the disruption: William. His body absorbed the massive energy surge, the green veins glowing brightly before his form collapsed entirely. The battle for Nexus Prime ended hours later. Without the Queen's direction, the Shrike forces were easily contained and eliminated. Similar reports came in from other worlds. The entire Shrike network had been thrown into disarray by the loss of their central coordination. 1 week later, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. High Counselor Alara addressed the representatives from all Confederation species. "We faced extinction," she said solemnly. "And we were saved by one of those we had imprisoned and feared. William Carter gave his life not just for humanity, but for all sentient beings." She gestured to Zaxtor and Samantha, who stood at the side of the chamber. "These two have shared the true history of Earth's conflict with the Confederation. We must acknowledge our mistake. Humans were not building weapons to attack us. They were preparing defenses against the Shrike, defenses we desperately needed." The Council voted unanimously to release all remaining human prisoners and grant them full citizenship within the Confederation. Plans were made to restore Earth, which had been quarantined rather than destroyed after the war. As the session ended, Zaxtor approached Samantha. "There is something you should see." He led her to a secure medical facility deep beneath the government complex. Inside a specially designed chamber floated what appeared to be a cocoon of Shrike material. But unlike the aggressive green mass they had fought, this was calm, pulsing gently with a blue light. "We found this at the battle site," Zaxtor explained. "It contains cellular material that matches William's DNA, but it's Changing. Samantha studied the readings on the monitoring equipment. The Shrike infection, the Queen's energy surge, they've triggered some kind of metamorphosis. The cocoon pulsed as if in response to her voice. Is he alive? Zaxtor asked. I don't know, Samantha admitted. But whatever's happening in there, it's not Shrike and not human, it's something new. As they watched, the cocoon pulsed again, stronger this time. Deep within, something was awakening. Something that carried William's human consciousness, but also the vast knowledge of the Shrike network, including the warning about what waited beyond the galaxy's edge. The last human prisoner had saved the galaxy. But his story was not yet over.